Hi, I'm Rowan. My father once stood in front of a room full of people, my children included, and called me a failure. Years later, soaked in rain and shame, he stood on my porch and said, "I have nowhere else to go." What happened in between? How does a parent go from humiliating their child to begging for shelter under their roof? Before we dive in, have you ever had to set a boundary that your family refused to respect? Have you ever been the one pushed aside just because you chose peace? Tell me, what time are you listening to this, and where are you watching from? I really want to know. Drop it in the comments. Let's connect. I knew we were late the moment we pulled into the driveway. The sun had already dropped behind the neighboring roofs, and the front windows of my parents' house glowed with too much light and too much laughter. The kind that doesn't wait for anyone. Jace sat up straighter in the back seat. "I think they already started," he whispered. Ren didn't say anything. She was clutching the card she made with both hands, the edges already soft from how many times she'd checked it on the way over. I stepped out of the car, smoothing my shirt. My hands smelled like hand sanitizer and lemon wipes, the kind I used to scrub their lunch boxes. I held their hands as we walked to the door. It was already open. Inside, the smell of pot roast and red wine hit us first. Then the music, old jazz, something my father always insisted sounded like real celebration. I caught a glimpse of the dining room before anyone noticed us. The table was full, every chair taken, not just used, arranged, planned. My mother was laughing at something Lyle had said. Her wine glass tilted at just the right angle. The cake was half cut. I hadn't even unzipped my coat when my father spotted us. The room went still, not silent, not tense, just paused. "You're late," he said, his voice carrying effortlessly. I started to reply, to explain, but he didn't let me. "Seats at this table are earned," he said, raising his glass, "not handed out to failures." Ren's hand tightened around mine so fast I thought she might fall. Jace looked up at me, confusion blooming like a bruise on his face. No one laughed, but no one objected either. I felt every eye slide away like we were background noise. Clarice shifted in her seat but didn't speak. Lyle smiled down into his plate. I nodded once, quietly. Then I turned. Still holding both of their hands, I walked out the door we came through. Behind us, just before it closed, I heard someone murmur, "She always was too sensitive." That night, the car ride home was the quiet kind, not the peaceful kind. The kind where every red light lasts a little too long. Ren didn't eat dinner. She went straight to her room and curled up under her blanket without a word. Jace hovered in the hallway until I finished washing the dishes we hadn't used. When I turned around, he asked, "Why does Grandpa hate you?" I swallowed, then knelt. "He doesn't know how to love," I said. Ren didn't speak the next day, or the day after. Not at school, not during her favorite show. Not when Marla offered to paint with her. By the second night, Marla sat next to me on the couch and said, "Maybe we should call someone." I shook my head. "He already did this to me once," I said. I think this time she felt it too. That night, I opened the drawer by my bed, pulled out an old leather journal I hadn't touched in 5 years. The spine cracked like something exhaling. I wrote one line. The words he said weren't just about me, they landed on her. On the third morning, Ren finally whispered to Marla at breakfast, asking if she could use the blue cup instead of the red. It was the first thing she'd said. Marla smiled like it was a sunrise. I sat in my car for 10 minutes before work, not because I was late, but because I needed to remember how to feel steady. That afternoon, I got a message from Clarice. No apology, just, "You could have handled that better." I didn't reply. I deleted it, emptied the trash folder, and closed my phone. I said aloud to no one, "No more emotional tax for access to a table I never belonged at." That night, I found Ren's birthday card to my father, tucked into the pocket of her old denim jacket. On the front, she had drawn a stick figure in a red hat and written in her uneven handwriting, "You're the best grandpa ever." I lit the stove, struck a match, and held the corner over the flame until the card curled in on itself, blackening like something ashamed. As it burned in the sink, I whispered, "Let's not lie to our kids anymore." It had been 3 weeks since the birthday dinner, and my mother called to ask if we could stop by for breakfast. She used her usual tone, light, rehearsed, like nothing had happened, like she hadn't watched my daughter flinch under the weight of her husband's words. I said yes. Maybe it was for closure. Maybe because Jace had whispered he missed Grandma's cinnamon pancakes. Maybe because I was still carrying around the stupid hope that they'd realize the damage they'd done. The house looked the same. That too tidy suburban neatness. Wren held her craft box with both hands, silent but calm. Jace ran ahead to knock, eager like he hadn't witnessed what I knew he had. Clarice opened the door with her smile already in place. "You made it just in time," she said. Lyle was flipping pancakes at the stove like he lived there. His shirt was ironed crisp, and he greeted me like an MC. The guest of honor finally arrives. I smiled with half my face. The table was already set. Lyle's wife poured juice into 4 glasses. Only 4. There were no extra place settings. I wasn't surprised anymore, just tired. We sat. Clarice complimented the kids' handmade cards, placing them on the counter like flyers. When Lyle's son asked about them, she waved it off. "Just something little Wren made." I looked up and saw it. Above the fireplace hung a new portrait. Large, glossy, staged. Clarice, Raymond, Lyle, his wife, their kids. We were not in it, not cropped, not missing, simply never there. No one acknowledged it. The conversation skipped along like polished stones on a lake. Wren glanced at me, then at the photo. "Were we late for picture day?" she asked. I shook my head and smiled. "They just wanted something small," I lied. Lyle raised his glass of orange juice. "That shot turned out perfect, didn't it, Mom?" Clarice nodded, but her eyes flicked away from mine. Later, Wren asked where the bathroom was. I walked her down the hallway, past the framed memories that lined the wall. Graduations, holidays, toddler toes, and missing teeth. My photo was gone, the one from when I was 6, gap-toothed and holding a pine cone. It had sat there for as long as I could remember. In its place was a silver frame, Lyle, mid-laugh, holding his baby boy. I picked it up, slowly, like it might burn me. On the back, written in my mother's looping cursive, it said, "The one who made us proud." That night, back home, I told Marla what happened. She didn't gasp, she didn't rage. She just reached for my hand under the table and said, "You can't fight for a seat in a house that already locked the door." After she and the kids went to bed, I went to the closet and pulled out a dusty box marked 1985, 1999. Inside were years of birthdays, school photos, hand-drawn bookmarks, and one photograph of me, sunburnt, squinting, holding a trophy I never got congratulated for. I took the photo to my nightstand and left it face up. This is the last time I begged to be remembered. The envelope was thick. That was the first thing I noticed. I pulled it from the mailbox the same way I always did, absent-mindedly, one hand holding my coffee, the other checking for anything that looked important. Bills, flyers. One piece stood out. My name was typed in bold. Rowan Gerhardt, guarantor. I froze on the porch. Inside the envelope was a statement from a regional bank I didn't recognize. Loan summary, $25,000, co-signed. The borrower was listed as Lyle Gerhardt. The signature at the bottom looked like mine, looked enough like mine to convince a banker, but I had never signed it. Marla was in the kitchen when I stepped back inside. I didn't say anything. I set the envelope on the dining table and stared at it as if it might explain itself. When she asked, "Everything okay?" I nodded, too quickly. Later that morning, after the kids had gone to school and Marla left for work, I called the bank. I used my client voice, measured, calm, but clipped at the edges. They confirmed the loan, confirmed the digital signature. When I asked for a copy, the man on the phone paused. "You'll see," he said. "It's definitely yours." The email arrived 3 minutes later. I opened it, full screen. The signature was close. Too close. It was the signature from my refinance paperwork 3 years ago. Same slope in the R, same subtle pressure in the G only. This time it had been dragged into a PDF, inserted, not written. I stared at it until my vision blurred. I remembered the first time I explained co-signing to a client. I was fresh out of law school, full of clarity and pride. You're responsible for the loan, even if it's not yours. That's what makes it dangerous. I had said it like it was a warning, a fact. Now it was personal. I didn't call my parents, I didn't scream, I didn't cry. That evening, Marla found the envelope where I'd left it, still opened, still unread beyond the first shock. She sat beside me. I handed it over without a word. She read it slower than I had, then set it down and said, "What are you going to do?" "I don't know," I said, and I meant it. The next morning, a manila folder arrived by courier. No return address. Inside was an official demand notice from the bank. Collection proceedings would begin in 30 days unless the loan was paid or restructured. It was no longer just a signature. It was a countdown. I took the folder with me to lunch with Naomi, a friend from law school. She still worked downtown, sharper than I ever was. She skimmed the documents and leaned back. "You can sue," she said. "Open and shut, but it'll be messy, public. If you win, they're ruined. If you lose, your name's attached to it forever." She didn't say what I was thinking, that I'd be suing my own blood. That night, I tucked the demand letter into the back of a black binder. It was growing heavy now. Inside were printed emails, screenshots, receipts, a catalog of everything I'd once let slide. I labeled the folder, for when they deny it. Before I slid it into the fireproof box, I whispered to no one, "You forged me once. You don't get to rewrite me again." The next morning, my phone rang. It was my father. The house smelled like buttercream and balloon latex. Ren had spent the morning lining up paper crowns and writing names in sparkly gel pen. Every detail was tiny and thoughtful, just like her. The thank you cards dried on the window ledge, each dotted with a crooked heart. She'd made a VIP pass, too. It said, "Grandpa Special Guest," and had a drawing of them together, holding matching ice cream cones. I texted Clarice a reminder the day before. No response, but that wasn't new. I convinced myself she'd show, that he'd show, that somewhere they remembered how to show up. On the day of the party, Ren put on her purple dress an hour early. She kept checking the window, adjusting her headband, then peeking again. At 2:17, my phone buzzed. It was Clarice. "Dad's attending something important for Lyle. We'll visit soon." That was it. I didn't read it out loud. I just turned off the screen. Ren was watching. She didn't ask. She peeled the glitter sticker off her dress and set it gently on the table beside her. Jace tried to cheer her up, showing her how his paper crown folded like a boat. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. The guests arrived. The cake was cut. Ren blew out her candles while Marla held her shoulders, steady and close. The other parents clapped. The kids played. I took photos I didn't want to look at again. From the kitchen window, I watched as Marla sat with Ren on the porch swing. Ren leaned her head on her shoulder, still wearing the VIP pass like a secret no one else noticed. Later that night, after the streamers were swept up and the candles had been scraped from the tablecloth, Ren slipped into our bedroom. She didn't knock, just crawled under the blanket, curling up beside me like she did when she was 3, and thunderstorms shook the walls. "Does Grandpa not like me?" she asked. There was no anger in her voice, no tears, just a small, tired question, too grown for her age. My throat closed around every answer I wanted to give. Instead, I lied. "No, honey, he's just busy." She nodded. "But I made him something." I kissed her forehead. I know, it was beautiful. She didn't say anything else, just pressed closer. After they both fell asleep, Ren beside me, Marla on the other side, I got up and walked to the hallway. The house was dark, still humming with the silence that always follows company. I sat on the floor with the VIP pass in my hand. The crayon hearts were smudged. The string had come loose. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just opened my journal and wrote. The cycle didn't break. It bled. The next morning, I made coffee before anyone else was up. Then I opened my laptop. The cursor blinked like it was waiting for me to decide what came next. I typed, "Power of attorney, Iowa." Then, "Foreclosure law, familial fraud." The VIP pass was pinned to the corkboard above my desk, hanging by one gold pushpin. This time I wasn't planning out of anger. I was planning so my daughter never had to ask that question again. The call came on a Thursday afternoon while I was folding Ren's laundry. Clarice's name lit up my phone screen like a dare. "We're having lunch this Sunday," she said. "If you're free, drop by." That was it. No mention of Ren's birthday the week before, no apology, no softening of tone. Just an invitation dropped into the middle of my week like a receipt someone expected me to pick up and pay. I hesitated, said we'd see. Marla asked me what I wanted to do. I didn't answer. Not really. But Sunday came, and somehow we found ourselves pulling into their driveway again, the kids in the back seat trying not to fidget too loudly. Clarice opened the door wearing her usual pressed sweater and that smile that never quite reached her eyes. "Oh," she said, looking behind me. "I thought it'd just be you three." The table was set for 5, 3 plates in the dining room, 2 stools at the kitchen bar. "Kids can sit up there," she added like it was nothing, like it hadn't always been nothing. Ren clutched her water bottle. Jace climbed onto the stool without complaint. Lyle's voice came from the hallway. "Still smells like Sunday in here." He was already halfway into the room before he realized we were there. He winked at Marla. "Didn't expect the whole crew." I didn't answer. Just took the seat that was clearly mine, marked not with a name, but with absence. Clarice brought out plates for Marla, Ren, and me. She handed Marla a salad with goat cheese and pecans, like she remembered her preferences. Then she turned to Jace. "I didn't know you were coming, sweetie," she said, opening the fridge. She pulled out a red Tupperware container. "But we've got leftovers from last night." She scooped something pale and lumpy onto a plate, handed it to Jace like it was a treat. He took it, smiled, sat at the edge of the counter, swinging his legs slowly as he ate. Marla shifted her chair closer to him. I stared at my fork. I couldn't taste anything. I just kept chewing. It wasn't about the food. It never is. It was about the 5 plates already set, the 2 chairs that didn't exist, the way Clarice filled spaces like she'd already decided who belonged and who didn't. Later in the car, Jace said the chicken was good. He meant it. Ren didn't speak. Her fingers traced the fog on the window. Marla reached over and squeezed my hand as we stopped at a red light. "I think," I said quietly, "that was the last time I tried to translate harm into hospitality." No one asked what I meant. That night, after everyone went to bed, I pulled out my journal. I drew a table, counted the plates. 5. Then I wrote beneath it, "We were the 6th." It was a quiet Sunday, the kind where time stretches out a little too wide. Ren sat at the dining table, hunched over with her markers spread out like tools of devotion. She was drawing again, for the first time since the birthday card. This time, it wasn't for school, or a project, or even to hang on the fridge. "This one's for Grandma and Grandpa," she said, not looking up. I nodded, but my hands paused mid-rinse at the sink. She'd drawn all of us. Our family holding hands in a ring. Her, Jace, Marla, even me. And off to the side, Raymond and Clarice holding hands too, smiling. Ren folded it carefully, slid it into a pastel envelope, and sealed it with a sticker shaped like a sunflower. She didn't ask me to mail it. She didn't ask me to deliver it. She just placed it in my work bag and said, "When you go." A week later, I stopped by to return a baking dish. Lyle was there, bouncing his son on his hip like a trophy. Clarice was in the living room, wrapping a last-minute gift. She used shiny tape, not even pressed down all the way. I was halfway into the doorway when I saw the paper. It was Ren's drawing, creased, torn at the edge, taped like any other scrap. Clarice handed it to Lyle's child, who didn't even pause before ripping it down the middle. Bits of our family fell to the floor, forgotten under wrapping paper and cardboard. I didn't say anything, just stood there and watched as the art my daughter had made, the piece she folded with both hands, was shredded without a glance. Clarice turned to me, smiling. "You're early. Want coffee?" "No," I said. "I won't stay." In the car, I drove slower than usual. The baking dish clinked against the seatbelt. When I picked up Ren, she asked, "Did they like it?" My throat tightened. I smiled, nodding. They smiled. That night I couldn't sleep, not because of what was done, but because of what it meant. 2 days later, Clarice called. "Ren around?" I thought she might want to come for a visit. I took a breath, then asked gently, "Did you know that drawing was for you?" There was a pause, then she laughed. "Oh, that? It was just a drawing. I thought it made sweet wrapping." I hung up. That night, I opened a notebook I hadn't touched in years. On the cover, I wrote in red ink, words they never meant. The first entry was hers. It was just a drawing. Underneath it, I added, "Love doesn't reuse what was meant to be kept." Ren hasn't drawn since. Her sketchbook sits untouched on her desk, the pages still crisp. I tried asking once if she wanted new markers. She said she forgot how. I didn't correct her. That evening, she slid her hand into mine during a movie and whispered, "It's okay. I don't need to make things for people who don't want to keep them." I looked at the fireplace, where pictures of our family used to sit. One by one, I had stopped replacing them. But they, Clarice, Raymond, even Lyle, never stopped knowing how to erase. It was a Saturday morning, the kind that smells like coffee and butter and everything familiar. Marla was flipping pancakes. Jace was finishing a drawing at the counter. Ren was humming something tuneless, curled up on the rug with her markers again, for once. Then came the doorbell. Jace jumped up to answer, still barefoot, his voice a little too surprised. "Grandpa?" By the time I got to the hallway, they were already standing there, Raymond and Clarice, not polished like usual. He was in an old coat I hadn't seen in years, and her hair was flat, unbrushed. Clarice clutched a thick manila folder like it was an organ she'd just removed from her own body. They didn't say good morning. They said, "Can we talk?" We sat in the kitchen, the same one they'd stood in years ago when they told me I needed to grow up. That family wasn't charity. That love had to be earned. Clarice spoke first. Her voice wobbled, not with emotion, but effort. "Lyle's gone," she said. "We haven't heard from him in months." Raymond slid the folder toward me. Inside were loan documents, notices, letters from a bank I didn't use, and a single page marked, "Notice of foreclosure, intent to proceed." "He convinced us to co-sign," Raymond said. "Said it was safe, that he'd double it in 6 months." I didn't look up. My hands stayed still, even as the pages burned beneath my fingertips. $200,000. That was the number it took to break them. Not words, not betrayal, not the erosion of every birthday and invitation and photo. But this. I remembered being 18 and asking them for help with my tuition. Clarice said, "You're smart, you'll figure it out." Lyle got a $15,000 check for a landscaping company that lasted 6 weeks. I remembered eating ramen while he traveled, working nights while he borrowed again. This wasn't news. This was the invoice for a lifetime of receipts. Clarice's voice softened. It was too careful. "Roro, we didn't know where else to go." The nickname hit like a slap. Roro, the name I stopped answering to at 10, when I realized it was used more often to soothe their guilt than to show love. Raymond added, "You've always been the one with a steady head. You always land on your feet." I looked up then, finally, looked right at them. "You chose him," I said, over and over. "You gave him everything. And now you want me to pay for that choice?" Clarice's eyes filled. She didn't blink, but I saw it. Not sadness, not regret, loss of control. I stood and walked to the fridge, opened it. Not because I needed anything, but because I needed space. They didn't move. When I returned, I didn't sit. I picked up the folder. "I'll think about it," I said, "after I speak to my lawyer." Clarice gasped softly. Raymond didn't say a word. I walked past them to my bedroom, closed the door behind me, and locked it. Inside, I slid the folder into the fireproof safe. On the front, I stuck a yellow note that read, "Emotions are not currency, and I'm not your bank." The envelope was thin, pale blue, with my name written in shakier cursive than I remembered. Inside, a folded New Year card and a crisp $20 bill. The message was short. "Let's start fresh. Come by next weekend." No names, no signatures. Just the kind of sentence that pretends to clean the slate without ever sweeping the mess. I left it on the counter. Marla saw it first. "Are we going?" I shrugged. "I'll ask the kids." Ren didn't look up from her cereal. Jay said, "Sure, if we don't stay too long." We arrived mid-afternoon. The sky hung low and gray, like even it couldn't be bothered to brighten for the occasion. Clarice opened the door with both arms ready. She hugged Jace, called him her little man, and then turned to Ren. Raymond stood behind her, arms already open, a smile trying too hard. Wren didn't move. She looked up at me instead. I gave her nothing. No push, no nod. Just silence. She stepped behind my leg. The room stilled. Raymond's smile faltered. His arms fell back to his sides like they'd miscalculated gravity. We walked in, sat down. The table was dressed with placemats and lukewarm quiche. Clarice made 3 different kinds of muffins. Like quantity might cover what quality couldn't. Raymond only spoke to Jace. Clarice asked Wren if she liked blueberries, even though Wren had always hated them. No one mentioned the envelope. No one mentioned anything. Wren pushed the food around with her fork, the metal scratching faintly against the plate. When it was time to leave, Clarice reached for Wren again, pulled her in close. Wren didn't push back, but she didn't hug her either. Her body stayed stiff, her arms stayed at her sides. Clarice let go, blinking too fast. We drove home in near silence, the kind of quiet that isn't empty, just full of things that won't be said. That night, Wren pulled the New Year card from her backpack. She didn't ask permission, didn't explain. Just walked into the kitchen, laid it flat on the table and ripped it clean down the middle. Then again, and again. She opened the trash can and let the pieces drop in like petals. I watched from the hallway, unnoticed. I didn't stop her. Later, I sat at my desk, opened my notebook, and wrote. She didn't scream, she didn't cry, but she understood, faster than I ever did. I pulled the pieces of the card from the trash, pressed them flat between 2 pages, and closed the book. At bedtime, Wren knocked on the door. "Next time," she said. "Can we not go if we don't want to?" I nodded. "We never have to go where we're not wanted again." I turned off the light. The room went still. Then in the dark, her voice. "Even if they say they want us?" It had been a year since the last visit. A year without cards. A year without invitations. A year where silence became the most respectful thing any of us could offer. The morning was still. Marla had just left with the kids, her goodbye kiss lingering a beat longer than usual. I was answering emails at the kitchen table, distracted by the way the rain tapped the windows, like it was asking to be let in. Then came the knock. Soft, hesitant. I expected a delivery. Maybe the neighbor's son returning a misdelivered package. But when I opened the door, it was Raymond. He looked smaller than I remembered, his coat soaked through, hair clinging to his forehead, and hands empty. "I have nowhere to go," he said. I let him in. We didn't speak until we sat across from each other, the table between us now a courtroom. He explained. The house was gone. Lyle never came back. Clarice was with her sister in Michigan. He didn't say her name like it mattered, just that he'd been staying in motels, that he ran out of options. "Just for a while," he said. "I won't be in the way." I didn't answer. Instead, I reached into the drawer beside me, pulled out a folder I'd prepared months earlier. One of those things you never expect to use until it's too late not to. "This is a lease." He blinked. "What?" "You'll pay rent," I said. "You'll have no say in anything regarding my kids. And Lyle doesn't come near this house, not even for a holiday, not even if he's bleeding." His hand trembled as he reached for the pen. He tried to smile, tried to joke. "You always were the organized one." I didn't smile back. He signed. Weeks passed. He stayed in the guest room, quiet, polite, present, but never really there. Wren didn't speak to him, not once. Jace gave him nods like offerings. Clarice sent a small plant in a ceramic pot. No note, just a gesture too late. I watered it once, then let it sit. One afternoon, Evelyn from next door came for tea. She saw Raymond leaving out the back door as she arrived. She waited until we sat down before speaking. "People think humility is loud," she said, "but sometimes it's just someone choosing not to sit at the table anymore." I thought about that for a long time. One night, after the kids were asleep, I pulled out an old box from the closet. Inside was a photo I hadn't seen in years. Me, 9 years old, holding a fishing rod, squinting into the sun. My dad crouching beside me with a hand on my shoulder. I didn't cry. I framed it, placed it on the bottom shelf of the bookcase. Not hidden, not honored. Just there. Later that night, Marla leaned against the doorway. "Why keep it?" "I don't want to hate him," I said. "I just don't want to keep making room for his damage." She nodded. A few days later, I came home from errands and found the house still. A note on the table, an envelope, inside, the house key, and a single line. "Thank you for giving me a roof, even after I took yours away once." He was gone. No goodbye, just silence again. But this time, it wasn't heavy, it was peace. Sometimes, the most painful decisions are the ones that don't come with shouting matches or slammed doors. Just a quiet, final choice to stop letting someone hurt you. I used to think family was a place I had to earn a seat at. Now I know, family should never make you beg for space. If there's anything I've learned, it's this: boundaries are not betrayals. Walking away doesn't mean you're cruel. It means you've chosen peace over performance, healing over history. So let me ask you, have you ever had to close a door that should have been open to you? Did it feel like freedom or grief or both? I'd love to hear your thoughts. If this story touched you or reminded you of someone, drop a comment with one or share where you're watching from. And if it didn't connect, tell me why. I'm here to learn too. And hey, if you want more stories like this, real and raw, don't forget to subscribe. Your support helps this channel keep telling the stories that too often go untold. End of Fan Kuai.